Today, as we think about chemistry, I'm especially thinking of this light bulb. I had to go buy a new light bulb for my wife's lava lamp, and you've probably seen a light bulb that looked a lot like this, darkened or maybe silvery at the top, and of course it's burned out and it doesn't work anymore. So as we study chemistry, we're going to learn that we need to rely on symbols to help us understand a lot of what's going on in chemistry. And so this short message today is brought to you by the letter W and by the letter I. And so we're going to think about this light bulb and the letter W. The letter W is the symbol for tungsten. Now, tungsten is the material that most light bulb filaments are made of. Now, it starts out, of course, as a solid, so we might represent that with a capital W and say, this is a solid. And of course, we want that to be a solid because if it turns into a gas, well, we'd write that as tungsten as a gas, and of course that happens in a light bulb at high temperature. Some of this evaporates off the surface and turns into a gas. And so we get lots of tungsten up here in the bulb, just kind of floating around as a gas. Doesn't do good things for our light bulb though, because it ends up making light bulbs that look like this. So here we have our light bulb, and a lot of the tungsten that started out in the filament has turned into a gas, and then right up here where the bulb is cool, it recondenses. Now you've seen this with steam on a cold car window, that the molecules of water condense on the cold window. Well, that's what happens to the tungsten inside the light bulb. So this coating that we see that's kind of silvery or darkened is that tungsten that has recondensed on the inner surface of the light bulb. And of course, somewhere here, eventually enough tungsten disappeared that this failed and the light bulb burned out. So, right up here, the tungsten is turning from a gas to tungsten as a solid. So, now enter the element iodine from right about here in the periodic table. Now, you may remember that this family of elements right here has a special name. The halogens. Do you remember the halogens? Well, the halogens are these elements right in this part of the periodic table. Now, the halogens do something very interesting. If we have some halogens like iodine here in the light bulb, well, that iodine combines with the tungsten and makes a tungsten iodide compound. Well, what's interesting about that, and we could represent that with this chemical reaction, that tungsten combines with some iodine to produce tungsten iodide. Now this happens, this reaction that I've shown here in purple, see the arrow in purple? That happens when we're relatively cool. So out here, notice there's no tungsten recondensing on the inner surface of the light bulb. Why? Because the iodine is grabbing it and not letting it condense there. And so we have this compound. It's in a gas form. It's floating around out here in the light bulb. But guess what happens when these particles get down here close to the filament where it's hot? Right here where it's hot, electricity is going through this, making light. It's hot. This is what happens. See the reaction that's shown in red? It's hot. This chemical changes back into these chemicals, And so guess what happens to this tungsten? It reattaches to the filament. Absolutely amazing. And so this allows us to operate this light bulb hotter and brighter. And of course, by now you realize that since this is a halogen, that we probably call this a halogen light bulb. Now, there's one other thing I want to mention here about halogen light bulbs. They're made out of a special kind of glass, and this special kind of glass is tough. It doesn't allow these molecules to leak through the surface. We can build up a lot of pressure in here so that there's a lot of iodine vapor, and so we have this special kind of glass, high pressure, high temperature. Now, guess what happens if you touch this? It will be hot if it's on, but let's just say we're changing a halogen light bulb. Usually they don't screw in like this. Usually they just slip into a socket of some kind. We're changing this halogen light bulb and we put a fingerprint on it. Just a little fingerprint on the side of this bulb. It reacts with the glass and it makes this glass porous so that these iodine can escape. Once they've escaped, our reaction quits, our light bulb dies. So you know, if you've ever changed a halogen bulb, this is not a halogen bulb. If you've changed a halogen bulb, you know that the directions say, don't touch this with your fingers. Handle it with a cloth, a clean cloth, or a Kleenex or something so that you do not get the oils from your fingers on the halogen bulb. So this message was brought to you by what two letters? Well, the letter W. Oops, is that above the screen? Okay, the letter W, which is the symbol for tungsten. Originally it was called wolfram. Or the letter I, the symbol for iodine. So be sure you learn the symbols and names of all of those elements on the periodic table.